All right, we'll bring the meeting to order here. July 1st, 2014, 4 o'clock on the agenda. Number one, approval of summary minutes on June 17, 2014 regular meeting. The chair would take any questions, concerns, or a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the minutes as stated.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Same sign opposed. Motion passes. Moving on to administrative items. Action item number 2, application Z98AF, filed by Planscape Partners on behalf of the Rib Crib, requesting approval of a final site development plan, proposed Rib Crib restaurant. We will hear from city staff at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is identified as an administrative item. It is not a public hearing item. The public hearing on this property occurred back in 1998 and again in 2001 when the original zoning and overall plan for what is known as the Auburndale Edition was done, and John has an aerial photo up there for your review. But just as a way of an overview, this is the Lowe's Home Improvement Store here. This is a Holiday Inn that's under construction here along South 9th Street. This is the Dimaru Steakhouse. We pointed out in the staff report that the Planning Commission had approved a site plan for a Murphy Oil Company fueling facility there at the corner. That was done in 2011, but no building permit has ever been issued. So essentially we've got the 3 active development sites. This is the 4th proposal for development on one of the outlots. What we are discussing here today is that Rib Crib Barbecue Inc. has a contract to purchase Lot 4, Block 1, which is the shaded area here. It's the second lot in from Schilling Road. It's directly north of the Dimaru Steakhouse. They have submitted an application for final site development plan approval to construct a 4,474 square foot restaurant building with a seating capacity of 213 seats. There would be no drive-up window. It would be entirely a sit-down operation. And it's a 72 by 60 foot building essentially with some bump outs, and then there's an 8 by 16 vestibule here on the front facing 9th Street. The interior will have a bar area and main dining area, and then along the west side here is a proposed outdoor patio, and that would provide 38 seats when weather permits outdoor dining. The property is almost 1.5 acres, and so the building itself will only cover about 7% of the lot. About 60% of the lot will be paved with some surfacing, and then about 32% of the lot will be left in some form of green space. So there will be a green space buffer along South 9th Street, along this east-west access road, along the ring road here, and then a narrower buffer there. This is a copy of the landscape plan that shows how they would fill that area in. So again, this is the access road coming off 9th, the ring road coming down from Schilling Road, and Dimaru is right here. Probably the most notable feature on this site is the fact that it is crossed at the very southern end by a gas line, a high pressure gas line, and there's a 66-foot easement in there. Part of that is occupied by the ring road. 33 feet of that extends up onto this property. We have run into that gas line as planning commissioners looking at the plans for Courtyard by Marriott, the currently vacant Popeye's Chicken restaurant, and in the case of Lowe's, you can see this shaded pattern here. The gas line used to come straight across here. Well, they could not build a store over the gas line, so Lowe's actually paid to relocate the gas line around. So you can see it's here, it's coming across here, and they relocated the gas line around, but our gas line is running right through there. We have submitted the plans for Rib Crib to the Kansas Gas Service office for their review and comment, and we'll put their comments up here at the end of our presentation. But as we understand the project, the building will be oriented to face, the front entrance will face 9th Street, and the northwest and south facades will have feature brick accented by contrasting stone, and then maybe the applicant can clarify for us what that remaining material would be. We surmise that it might be colored EFA stucco, but I think the applicant can clarify that for us. It would feature storefront windows primarily on the north and west facades. Our setback along 9th Street is 98 feet. For point of reference, Dynaru sits 104 feet back from 9th Street, so it would pretty well line up with the Dynaru setback. The building would be 82 feet from the drive on the south, 114 feet from the drive on the east, and 60 feet from the north property line. The building would be about 16 feet tall with a raised parapet in the front. One thing about the Auburndale development, a great deal of planning went into traffic and access design and getting the plan worked out. So we're letting Mr. Stack sit in the audience because we don't anticipate any traffic issues here. There's platted restricted access on 9th, and no change to that is being requested or proposed. That ring road comes off of 9th Street. It's 30 feet in width, and it was designed to act as part of the internal circulation system. And so we've got accel and decel lanes there, and it seems to function really well. What they are proposing to do is to have a driveway 35 feet west of the 9th Street property line that would connect to that east-west access road, and then they'd have 2 driveways on the east connecting to the ring road. And overall, the site circulation and access to the building for fire protection, delivery, customer access looks very well designed. The plan shows a total of 89 off-street parking spaces, and we've gone into the analysis of how that was arrived at, and basically the city's ordinance tries to discourage the overbuilding of parking spaces that are unneeded or unlikely to be used, and so it allows businesses to have over 25% of the required amount of parking as of right without any special justification. And if they go over that cap, then they would need to request a variance or exception to that. But this is right at 25% over the minimum required amount. And so Rib Crib's plans comply with our requirements, and no variances or exceptions are being proposed or requested. The width of the driveways all meet city standards. The parking stall dimensions all meet city standards. And we think one thing that's notable is essentially 100% of the front yard setback area along 9th Street will be devoted to green space. Just like the traffic was all set up and addressed when this was originally laid out and proposed, there's a stormwater detention pond that is located south of Lowe's, and a set of pipelines in the parking lot that collect runoff, and that flows all to that pond, which is located down in this area. It's detained there and then discharged down to this point, goes along 9th Street, and then crosses under 9th Street over to West Dry Creek, going under I-135. So there are no real traffic or drainage issues associated with this site. It was all pre-designed. As far as signage, the only thing I think we made note of, and it maybe we misinterpreted or didn't correctly interpret the plan, but all the signage for this area was laid out in advance and each outlot is allowed one pole sign up to 30 feet in height and not exceeding 120 square feet. As we read the plan that was submitted, that this sign would slightly exceed the 120 square foot limitation and would need to be reduced slightly in size to comply with the 120 square foot limit. They're also talking about having wall signs in the south and west face of the building. The total square footage of the proposed wall signage is 158 square feet, so their total signage falls within the sign limitations based on their frontage. As far as landscaping, one of the challenges along this portion of South 9th Street is that there are overhead power lines. And so in this particular area, the Planning Commission had agreed to treat ornamental trees equivalent to shade trees in terms of tree units. And so this property exceeds our minimum front yard landscaping requirements as far as area, and we have encouraged the use of lower growing ornamental trees in lieu of the shade trees that might grow into the overhead wires. So along 9th Street, it is eastern redbuds and serviceberries that are being proposed. They also have a trash enclosure up at the northeast corner of the building here. That would be screened on the west, south, and north, and then would have an east-facing gate. We don't know the exact material of the enclosure, whether that would be wood or some masonry product, and then we could have the applicant clarify that for us. But the process the Planning Commission is engaged in is staff has conducted a review of this plan to determine compliance with city ordinances, regulations, and policies. And what you are to do today is based on your review of the plan, inform the applicant the extent to which you think the plan complies with our parking, signage, and landscaping regulations. And so your options would be to approve the site plan as submitted, approve the site plan subject to certain revisions or conditions, or recommend that the plan be resubmitted to the Planning Commission after substantial revisions are made. We believe in our review that except for the minor part of the square footage of the sign, that the applicant's plans conform with all the C3 requirements and the requirements of this planned commercial district that was created. And we would recommend approval of the site plan subject to the 6 conditions that we have outlined on page 8 of your report. And John, if you could go to that letter from Kansas Gas. What our experience has been, and this will require the applicant to coordinate with them, but one of the things that was done on Lowe's is that essentially if you're out there, you will see kind of a diagonal set of parking lot islands and landscape islands, and those were required to be put in by the gas company. If you pave over the gas line, they want at certain intervals an opening or vent. They don't want a hard cap of paving over that. And the reason for that is that if there were any kind of leak or pressure release, rather than having it build up under a solid paving cap, that they want vents at certain intervals so that that gas can vent off and not build up and rupture. So the applicant will still need to work with Kansas Gas. I think that, John, if you want to scroll up or the other direction, in view of the plans for the proposed rib crib, they have their approval to proceed with this as shown on the plans. So basically, they are okay with the parking and landscaping there. Basically, what is being put in over the gas line and the easement is essentially at the risk of rib crib should something happen with that gas line, it may require things to be dug up. But before we turn it over for questions, I think planning staff and the city's development review team would like to compliment the representative for Rib Crib of the quality of the plans that they submitted, made for great ease of review, and they were very responsive to the, we had a preliminary development review team meeting with their representative, and they were very responsive to the items that staff had identified, and so we do want to compliment them on the quality of the plans that have been submitted for your review. With that, I'd be open to any questions. We do have Mr. Stack hiding back there if you have questions about traffic.
Any questions? Believe it or not, I have one, and I'm going to do that. Mr. Stack, I do have a question for you, just for future things on here. On the front driveway, why would we not align that with the Dimaru one coming out? My thinking is if you get 3 cars or 4 cars stacked up there, now all of a sudden we have that same problem we have like at the Quick Shop on across from Walmart there. Car comes out, 3 coming out of Lowe's, and then now they can't do that. But wouldn't be moving that further down, create 4 or 5, 6 cars can line up to go out and then they can turn in there? Versus basically you can stack 3 cars, now all of a sudden we've got a big pile up there. If one covers that driveway, now, and they're waiting to turn in there. I'm thinking of like Chili's and Applebee's. Applebee's all exit out to the back. There is none off of that drive, and then Chili's is further down. It's not close to the
intersection.
To the intersection. So I'm just wondering why that would be there. It seems like we're creating another bottleneck, and it's not as busy now, but as that all develops there, it seems like we're creating one more bottleneck. I would think that by moving that down would help out traffic flow.
Okay, that's a good point. We, I don't know, Dean, on that. Kent Johnson reviewed this, and I'll just have to ask him on that. I know that. I don't think that came up.
I mean, everybody understand this is 9th Street here, and so this is the private. It's not a street. It's the private access road that connects 9th Street to the Lowe's Ring Road. So it's not quite the same situation as you would have on a public street. But what you're saying, you're projecting this as
not enough storage.
If there were an increase in traffic, that you would have more stacking space here for 9th Street by pushing this back.
Pushing it to the east a little ways and lining it up with Dimaru. I mean,
Would that create less parking stalls? I mean, if you got 25% more anyway.
You could argue, if
You
you
would
put that
think you-
down, you could put the parking stalls
Right.
where they are.
It seems like you could swap it and just, swap parking stalls for, and it would be the same, I would think. But we could, if that is something that makes sense. I don't know the reasoning why they would want it as close as they do, but it's a good question. And since it's a private road, I'm not sure we looked at that as closely as maybe we would on a public road. So that's a good point to have
And
raised.
that driveway be down further to the east.
We would probably want to hear from Mr.
We can
Fiskus
ask.
on that as to why it was designed in this way, and yes, it could conceivably result in no net loss in parking, but there might be some circulation or other reasons why that was put to line up with those aisles. But I think we would want to hear from Mr. Fiskus about the reason for that location and design.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Hearing none, we'll hear from the applicant at this time. State your name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon. Name is Ron Fiskus with Planscape Partners, Minneapolis, Minnesota, representing Rib Crib. Rib Crib is based in Tulsa, and they have a number of restaurants, largely through Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, few in Texas, few as far north as Mason City, Iowa. And they are embarking on a new expansion plan, and the Salina facility will be one of the new stores, the new design, and at the front end of these expansion plans that they have. Want to address some questions that have come up both in the staff report and in the conversation by the Planning Commission. One is the issue of the building materials. This is their new image facility, so it's comprised of brick at the entrance, cultured stone accents. That'll go well with the other buildings in the neighborhood. And then the staff is correct. It's a synthetic stucco material, an EFS material that will be the rest of the building. So it all works well together and all works well with the neighborhood. The other question from the staff raised was with regard to the trash enclosure. Trash enclosure is a combination of vertical metal posts with horizontal metal panels that fit into those. So resilient product, it'll be painted the same to pick up the same dark earth tones that the building has. So it'll all fit nicely together and will stand up to the rigors of a trash enclosure over time. The pole sign issue, yes, it was a misunderstanding by the architectural staff about the maximum size of the sign. We will comply with the 120-foot maximum sign size and the maximum 30-foot height. So it'll change very little from the image that you see there, just downsized a very little bit. If we could get the site plan up. The reason the driveway location was selected as it is was to provide more direct access by people, oh, thank you, by people coming into the parking lot. There it is. the button on the side, thank you. So cars coming in will be able, most of the cars will be destined for these parking stalls up in the front. So providing them a more direct route in simplifies their turning movements, eases the access to the property, results in less stacking in here by people getting in, trying to slow down to make these turning movements. We can talk about relocating it. If this was a higher volume facility, like a fast food restaurant or gas station or something like that, where you have large bulges of people coming in and out of the property at a very tight time frame, like fast food restaurants, the traffic will peak between 5 and 7, and then it kind of levels off after that. This is intended, the type of restaurant it is, results in more staggered traffic flow, lower volumes of traffic flow. So the opportunity for creating a stacking situation as people come and go is less than if it was a high volume kind of facility. So we believe that this location for this entrance works very well. We've used that same kind of layout in others. But if that's a stumbling point for the Planning Commission, we can certainly talk further about that.
Well, where are you located in Kansas right now?
In Kansas, just opened one up in Springfield. That was a relocation of another one. We have just recently gotten approval in Pittsburgh, Kansas. That'll start construction very shortly. There are a couple of others in locations I can't recall at the moment.
Derby.
Okay. They have 5 or 6 in Oklahoma City. They have 3 or 4 in Tulsa. So with that, that's really all I have to present, except that you need to know as a planning commission, a lot of the work we do, frankly, is working for municipalities and working with their planning commissions and their city councils, helping them write and rewrite zoning ordinances and do comprehensive plans and those sorts of things. So we get to see a lot of planning commissions and city councils and city staffs throughout the country. you as a planning commission need to know that your process that your staff goes through with the design review team, the DRT process, is excellent. It's absolutely the best we've seen, leaves very few, if any, questions on the part of the developer. Staff have been incredibly accessible and great to work with. And so as you're looking at development picking up as it is in Salina, you need to know that your staff is incredibly well equipped for that. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd sure be happy to respond.
Were you comfortable and understood the recommended conditions of approval?
Yes, all 6 items we completely agree with. I addressed the sign. We have had communication with Kansas Gas Service. Our conversation with Deb Reinbold mirrors what showed up in the letter.
I just got a written copy of that today, so that's why we put it up on the screen, and I think that pretty well addresses condition number 2.
We will submit cut sheets for the light fixtures. We understand the KDHE stormwater permit requirements, and we will comply with that. We do plan to complete construction in compliance with the approved site plan, and we will definitely pull a building permit within 18 months. The intent would be, after this meeting, take probably 2 or 3 weeks to complete the construction drawings for submittal for building permit. So in best case, building permit might be issued by early to mid-August. That would allow construction to start somewhere around September 1st, which means construction completion should occur sometime late November, early December. So I can't promise you rib crib for Thanksgiving, but by Christmas, it should be available for Christmas parties.
Wonderful. Any questions? Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think it's important to know that, again, this is a discretionary item for the Planning Commission, and if a majority of the Planning Commission, obviously, option 2 there is to approve the site development plan subject to certain revisions, and if a majority of the Planning Commission feels that the south access drive should match up with the Dimeru entrance, then that can be a revision to the site plan. But in terms of just the conformance of the plan with our requirements, it does meet those. It is just a matter of judgment whether from a circulation and a traffic standpoint that is preferential for the majority of planning commissioners. So you do have discretion to approve it subject to a revision or as submitted.
Todd, would you be okay at just leaving that at the discretion of the developer and city engineering staff to look at that one more time, and then between them figure out what may be right?
Yeah, it doesn't bother me either. Again, it's not a major street. There's one over with a traffic light. So it is a little different on there. I just thought it was interesting with the layout with the stacking of the traffic on if it does become busier. But obviously these gentlemen know more and deal with it more than myself. I've just seen things like that happen, and so I thought I'd bring it to attention and see if it got overlooked. But if they're aware of it and they still
I think the primary difference was that the level of traffic volume and other users or uses there at the Saturn Central Mall entrance is greater, and so the driveway for Chili's was kind of centered there to create more stacking space at the intersection. But this is not a signalized intersection, and there is a right turn lane out and an acceleration lane, and obviously the traffic volumes south of Schilling Road are much lower than they are between Magnolia and Otto. So we took note of it as staff, but because this was a private drive and not a public street, it was not something that we asked the applicant to modify in our review, but it is certainly within your discretion if you think it would function better to match up with Dimeru's.
Okay.
Jerry's got a question.
Jerry? No? If not, Chair would entertain a motion.
I got a motion.
Wait a second.
I'm delighted that the business is coming to Salina. Compliments to you for choosing Salina. I would make a motion that we approve application Z98-8F, subject to the 6 staff recommendations as listed on page 8 in your agenda, and encourage the developer to at least talk with city engineering staff again about the driveway entrance concern that was brought up here.
And I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you, appreciate it. And we definitely will work with engineering staff on that.
Thank you. Safe travels.
What we will do is we will send you a letter summarizing today's action, so you'll have that in writing with the conditions, and it'll just tell you your next steps, which is submittal of a building permit.
Ready to go.
We would also obtain a copy of that letter from the gas utility.
Yes. Do that.
Great. I appreciate it.
Wonderful. On with administrative items. Number 3 is other matters.
We will advise you to get your fund for the 4th of July holiday and then rest up, because we will have a chock-full meeting on the 15th. We will be bringing back hookah bars and vapor lounge text amendments. We will be bringing back parking lot surfacing for additional discussion, and then we have a draft ordinance that would deal with the distributive antenna systems, DAS, the placement of those in the public right-of-way, primarily on existing utility poles and street lights. And we've been working with the city attorney's office on putting together a ordinance that would address that. And then we also have a request for a street name change. And so those will all be on your agenda on the 15th.
Wonderful. Anybody else with any other discussion? Questions or concerns? Hearing none, this has been adjourned.